The ground shook as another plasma blast hit forward Base 7. Captain Tae-ho Kim pressed his back against the concrete wall and checked his rifle. Around him, human soldiers scrambled to reload their weapons while the Vorthak warriors roared their battle cries. "Incoming swarm from the east," shouted Hyunwoo Lee from his communication post. His voice crackled through the radio as explosions drowned out half his words. Graktha, the Vorthak war leader, stood 7 feet tall with green scales covering his massive body. His yellow eyes glowed with excitement as he watched the approaching enemy. The hive drones moved like a black wave across the desert, their insect bodies clicking and buzzing. "Finally, a real fight," Graktha growled. He flexed his clawed hands and turned to his warriors. "Show these soft humans how real warriors fight." 20 Vorthak soldiers charged forward without waiting for orders. Their powerful legs carried them across the battlefield faster than any human could run. They crashed into the first line of hive drones with brutal force. Claws tore through chitinous armor while powerful jaws crushed enemy heads. Tae-ho watched the display of raw power and shook his head. The Vorthak fought like wild animals. They were strong and fearless, but they had no plan beyond kill everything in front of you. Sujin Park knelt beside a wounded human soldier, her medical kit spread on the ground. "We need to fall back to the inner defenses," she called out to Tae-ho. "There are too many of them." "The Vorthak won't retreat," Tae-ho replied. He raised his rifle and fired controlled bursts at the approaching drones. Each shot found its target, but more enemies kept coming. Graktha's warriors were magnificent fighters. Their natural weapons sliced through dozens of enemies. But the hive had numbers on their side. For every drone they killed, 3 more took its place. Min-ho Choi lay prone on a rooftop with his sniper rifle. He picked off hive commanders with precise shots, but even he could see the situation was hopeless. "Captain Kim," he spoke into his radio, "I count at least 3,000 enemies. Maybe more." Tae-ho studied the battlefield through his binoculars. The hive was using a classic pincer movement trying to surround the base. If they could hit the enemy flanks now, they might break the attack. "Graktha," Tae-ho shouted over the noise of battle. "Pull your warriors back. We can hit them from both sides if we—" "Silent, Softskin," Graktha roared back without looking away from his enemies. His claws dripped with green hive blood. "Leave war to warriors. You humans stay back and count your bullets." The insult stung, but Tae-ho had heard worse from the Vorthak. They respected only strength and saw humans as weak creatures who hid behind technology. The fact that human tactics had won dozens of battles meant nothing to them. Jiun Song crouched behind a barrier, preparing explosive charges. She was small even by human standards, but her skill with demolitions was legendary. "Captain, I can bring down that ridge if you give me 5 minutes. It would block their main approach." "Do it," Tae-ho ordered. He turned to Hyunwoo. "Send word to all human units. We're implementing Plan Delta in 3 minutes." Plan Delta was a complex retreat that would draw the enemy into killing zones while preserving as many lives as possible. It required perfect timing and coordination between multiple units. The Vorthak continued their frontal assault, unaware that the humans were preparing to fall back. To them, retreat was cowardice. Better to die fighting than to run like scared prey. Young-soo Kim ran between positions carrying ammunition and messages. Unlike the Vorthak communication system of roars and gestures, humans used precise radio coordination. Every squad knew exactly where to go and when to move. The ridge exploded in a shower of rock and dust. Jiun's charges worked perfectly, cutting off one avenue of enemy advance. But there were still too many hive drones pouring in from other directions. "All human units execute Plan Delta now," Tae-ho commanded. Like a well-rehearsed dance, human soldiers began falling back to prepared positions. They moved in small groups, covering each other and maintaining disciplined fire. Every movement had a purpose. The Vorthak saw the human retreat and roared in anger. "Cowards," Graktha bellowed. "Stand and fight." But the humans weren't running away in panic. They were drawing the enemy into carefully prepared killing zones. As hive drones chased after the retreating humans, they ran straight into overlapping fields of fire. Dong-hyun Park coordinated the withdrawal from the command bunker. His calm voice guided each unit to safety, while automated defenses tore into the pursuing enemies. "Bravo team, move to checkpoint 7. Charlie team, hold position for 30 more seconds." For a brief moment, it looked like the plan might work. The human retreat was orderly and effective. They were trading space for time while inflicting heavy casualties on the enemy. Then everything went wrong. A new type of hive creature appeared on the battlefield. It stood 12 feet tall with thick armor and massive claws. Worse, it seemed immune to human weapons. Rifle rounds bounced off its shell like raindrops. "What is that thing?" Sujin gasped as she watched the monster tear through their defensive positions. 3 more of the creatures emerged from underground tunnels. They had been hiding, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now they attacked the human fallback positions from behind. The Vorthak found themselves cut off from retreat. Their warriors fought bravely, but even their strength couldn't match these new enemies. Graktha watched 2 of his best fighters get crushed by massive claws. "Base 7 is lost," Teho said quietly into his radio. "All units, emergency evacuation. Get to the transport ships." The evacuation was chaos. Human soldiers ran for their lives while Vorthak warriors covered their retreat. The proud alien fighters finally understood that sometimes survival mattered more than glory. Teho grabbed Sujin's medical kit and helped her toward the landing zone. Behind them, forward Base 7 burned under enemy fire. Months of preparation and fortification were destroyed in hours. Only 43 humans and 21 Vorthak made it to the evacuation ships. As their transport lifted off, they watched the base disappear under a swarm of enemy forces. In the cargo hold, humans and Vorthak sat together in exhausted silence. Graktha stared at his claws, still bloody from battle. For the first time in his life, fighting hadn't been enough. The transport ship shuddered as enemy fire chased them into the sky. They were alive, but they were also stranded deep in hive territory with no way home. The transport ship crashed 3 hours after leaving forward Base 7. Young-Soo Kim had kept them in the air as long as possible, but enemy fire had damaged too many systems. When the engines finally died, he managed to bring them down in a rocky canyon instead of open desert. "Everyone alive?" Teho called out as smoke filled the cargo hold. Sujin Park moved between the wounded, checking injuries. 2 humans had broken bones, and 1 Vorthak warrior had a deep cut across his chest. "We need medical supplies," she said. "And shelter." Graktha pushed his way out of the wreckage first. His massive frame barely fit through the emergency exit. "This is hive territory," he growled, scanning the canyon walls. "They will hunt us." The war leader was right. This deep in enemy space, they were surrounded by hostile forces. Every moment they stayed in one place increased their danger. Min Ho Choi climbed onto a high rock with his rifle. His eyes swept the canyon for signs of movement. "I don't see anything yet, but that could change fast." Ji Eun-song salvaged what equipment she could from the crashed ship. Her explosive charges had survived the landing, along with some basic supplies. "We have food for maybe 5 days, she reported. "Less if we're feeding the big guys." She nodded toward the Vorthak. Beltar was the youngest Vorthak warrior in their group. Unlike the others, he sometimes listened when humans spoke. "What do we do now?" he asked Graktha. "We survive," the war leader replied. "We move at night and find water. Then we kill any enemies who try to stop us." It was a simple plan, the kind Vorthak preferred. But Hyunwoo Lee had been studying his communication equipment during the crash. "I'm picking up a lot of hive radio signals," he said quietly. "They're organizing search patterns. So we avoid them," Graktha said with a shrug. "Vorthak are expert hunters. We know how to move without being seen." Teho wasn't so sure. The hive wasn't like other enemies they had fought. These creatures seemed to think differently, to plan in ways that normal tactics couldn't predict. As night fell, the group began moving through the canyon. The Vorthak took the lead, their natural night vision better than any human equipment. They moved silently despite their size, using their predator instincts to avoid detection. But after 2 hours of walking, they ran into their first patrol. 6 hive drones scuttled along the canyon floor, their heads turning back and forth as they searched for survivors. Their compound eyes glittered in the starlight. Graktha smiled and flexed his claws. This was what he understood: a simple fight against visible enemies. The Vorthak warriors attacked before anyone could object. They moved like shadows, striking fast and hard. Within seconds, all 6 drones lay dead without making a sound. "Well done," Graktha whispered to his fighters. Quick and quiet, like proper hunters. But Sujin had been watching the dead drones carefully. Something bothered her about their behavior. "They weren't searching randomly," she told Teho. "Look at their positions when we found them." She was right. The drones had been moving in a precise pattern, each one covering a specific section of the canyon. It wasn't random at all. "They're mapping our escape routes," she continued. "These aren't just hunters. They're gathering information." Graktha overheard and snorted. You think too much, Softskin. Dead enemies cannot report anything. As they continued through the night, they encountered 2 more patrols. Each time the Vorthak struck quickly and efficiently. Their natural weapons made short work of individual drones. But Donghyun Park noticed something the Vorthak missed. The patrols are getting bigger, he whispered to Taeho. First 6 drones, then 8, now 12. They're adapting to our threat level. By dawn, they had traveled 15 miles through the canyon system. The Vorthak were pleased with their progress. They had killed over 30 enemies without losing a single fighter. Min-Ho Choi found a good hiding spot among the rocks and settled in with his rifle. I'll keep watch while everyone rests, he offered. As the others slept, Min-Ho observed everything around them. It was what human snipers did best: watch and wait, gathering information slowly and patiently. What he saw worried him. The Hive wasn't just sending random patrols anymore. They were coordinating their search, creating a grid pattern that would eventually find any hiding spot. Worse, they were learning from each encounter. When the group woke that evening, Min-Ho shared his observations. They know we're here, he said simply. And they're getting smarter about how they hunt us. Veltar looked confused. How can insects be smart? They just follow their instincts. These ones don't, Sujin replied. She had been thinking about the patrol patterns all day. They're sharing information somehow. Each group learns from the others. Grakta dismissed their concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. Let them learn. We are Vorthak. We have hunted thinking prey before. That night they ran into their biggest challenge yet. A massive hive hunter blocked their path through a narrow passage. The creature stood 15 feet tall with armor thicker than the transport ship's hull. Its 6 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and its head swiveled constantly, searching for threats. Finally, a worthy opponent, Grakta whispered. He signaled his warriors to attack. The Vorthak charged with their usual courage, but their claws couldn't penetrate the hunter's armor. The creature moved faster than something so large should be able to, swatting warriors aside like insects. 2 Vorthak fell with deep cuts across their chests. The others pressed their attack, but they were clearly outmatched. Then Hyunwoo Lee did something unexpected. He activated his communication jamming equipment, flooding the area with electronic noise. The hunter suddenly stopped moving. Its head turned in confused circles as it lost contact with the hive network. Now, Taeho shouted. The Vorthak warriors struck while the creature was disoriented. This time their claws found weak spots in its armor. Working together, they brought down the massive enemy. As the hunter died, Grakta stared at Hyunwoo's small electronic device. Your machine did that? It cut off its communication with the other hive creatures, Hyunwoo explained. Without the network, it couldn't coordinate its movements. For the first time, Grakta looked at a human with something other than disdain. Interesting, he muttered. They moved through the night more carefully now. The hive was definitely hunting them with organized patrols, but they had learned something important. The enemy's strength came from working together just like their own. As dawn approached, they discovered something that changed everything. Hidden in a valley ahead of them was a massive hive processing facility. Thousands of drones moved between towering structures that pulsed with organic light. But what made everyone stare in horror were the pens. Hundreds of creatures from dozens of different species were trapped inside energy barriers. They weren't just prisoners. They were being prepared for something worse. By the ancestors, Veltar whispered. What are they doing? Sujin studied the facility through Min-Ho's rifle scope. What she saw made her sick. They're not just conquering planets, she said quietly. They're harvesting entire populations. Taeho felt cold despite the morning heat. If this was happening on one world, it was probably happening everywhere the hive had attacked. The war wasn't just about territory anymore. It was about the survival of every thinking species in the galaxy, and they were the only ones who knew about it. The processing facility sprawled across the valley like a living nightmare. Donghyun Park studied it through his binoculars, counting guard positions and patrol routes. As an intelligence officer, he had trained for situations like this, but nothing had prepared him for the scale of what they were seeing. We need to get closer, he told Taeho. If we can access their communication network, we might learn how many facilities like this exist. Grakta's yellow eyes blazed with anger as he watched the captive beings in their energy pens. We should attack now. Free those prisoners and kill every hive creature in sight. With 20 warriors and 40 humans? Sujin asked. There are thousands of enemies down there. Better to die fighting than to sneak around like cowards, the war leader growled, but even Graktha could see the truth. A direct assault would accomplish nothing except getting them all killed. The facility's defenses were too strong, and the enemy had too many fighters. Veltar pointed to a structure on the facility's edge. What is that building? It looks different from the others. The structure was smaller than the main processing towers, but it pulsed with the same organic light. Strange symbols covered its surface, and dozens of communication arrays projected from its walls. A command center, Dong-hyun said with certainty. That's where they coordinate everything. Min-ho Choi had been watching the guard patrols for hours. I count 12-hour shifts, he reported. The guards change at dawn and dusk. There's a 15-minute window when the positions are undermanned. Ji-eun Song studied the approaches to the command center. I could get inside, but getting back out would be the problem. Too dangerous, Tae-ho said immediately. Not if we create a distraction, Young-soo Kim suggested. He had been unusually quiet since the crash, but now he stepped forward with determination. There are still power cells in our transport's wreckage. I could rig them to explode. Karvek, an older Vorthak warrior, shook his head. The explosion would bring every enemy in the valley down on us. That's the point, Young-soo replied. While they're dealing with the explosion, someone could slip into the command center. It was exactly the kind of plan that went against every Vorthak instinct. They preferred direct confrontation to sneaky tactics, but even Graktha had to admit it might work. I'll go into the facility, Dong-hyun volunteered. Intelligence gathering is what I do. Not alone, Sujin said. You'll need technical support to access their systems. The plan took shape slowly. Young-soo would return to the crash site and prepare explosives from the transport's remains. Meanwhile, Dong-hyun and Sujin would position themselves near the command center. When the distraction began, they would have minutes to get inside, download information, and escape. The rest of the group would provide covering fire and escape routes. As night fell, they put the plan into action. Young-soo made his way back through the canyon system, carrying salvaged power cells and detonation equipment. His pilot training had included demolitions, and he knew how to make the crash transport burn hot and bright. Dong-hyun and Sujin crept toward the facility's edge. They moved carefully, using human techniques for avoiding detection. Unlike Vorthak hunters who relied on natural stealth, humans used patience and observation to stay invisible. Guard change in 3 minutes. Min-ho whispered through their radio. He had positioned himself on a ridge with a perfect view of the facility. The Vorthak warriors spread out along the valley's rim, ready to provide covering fire when the escape began. They didn't fully understand the plan, but they trusted their human allies to know what they were doing. The explosion lit up the night sky. Young-soo had done his job perfectly. The crashed transport erupted in a column of fire and smoke that could be seen for miles. Every hive creature in the facility turned toward the blast. Guards abandoned their positions to investigate the disturbance. Patrol groups rushed toward the canyon where the explosion had occurred. For several precious minutes, the command center stood nearly undefended. Dong-hyun and Sujin sprinted across the open ground. The building's entrance was a membrane of organic material that parted at their approach. Inside, the walls pulsed with living light, and strange organic computers lined every surface. This is like nothing I've ever seen, Sujin whispered as she connected her portable interface to what looked like a central processing unit. The data flowed faster than any human computer could handle. Information about dozens of star systems, hundreds of worlds, and millions of captive beings. But Sujin's training helped her focus on the most important files. There are processing facilities on 47 worlds, she reported quietly. They're preparing for something called the Great Consumption. Dong-hyun photographed everything he could while Sujin downloaded data files. The hive's plans were massive in scope, involving the coordinated harvest of entire galactic sectors. We need to go, he said urgently. The guards will be back soon. But as they prepared to leave, Sujin discovered something that made her blood run cold. Tae-ho, she whispered into her radio. They know about the human fleet. They have detailed intelligence on our ship positions, weapon capabilities, everything. The Great Consumption wasn't just about harvesting primitive worlds. The Hive was planning a coordinated strike against every major military force in the galaxy, including the combined human Vorthak fleet. They're going to hit 12 sector capitals simultaneously, Sujin continued as she grabbed the last crucial files. In 72 hours. Outside, alarm sounds began echoing through the facility. The hive had discovered the infiltration. Move. Dong Hyun shouted. They ran from the command center as enemy forces converged on their position. Rifle fire erupted from the ridgeline as Minho and the others provided covering fire. The Vorthak warriors roared their battle cries and charged down into the valley. But there were too many enemies and the facility's defenses were coming online. This way, Young-Soo's voice crackled over the radio. I've got transport. He had somehow managed to steal a hive patrol craft from the crash site investigation. The insectoid vehicle wasn't designed for human use, but Young-Soo had figured out the basic controls. The evacuation was chaos. Human soldiers and Vorthak warriors piled into the stolen craft as enemy fire erupted around them. Young-Soo's piloting skills kept them airborne despite damage to the vehicle's organic systems. The engine's failing. He called back to the passengers. I can't maintain altitude much longer. Through the transport's transparent walls, they could see hive flyers pursuing them. The enemy aircraft were faster and better armed than their stolen vehicle. Get us to the rendezvous point, Taeho ordered. We'll worry about landing later. Young-Soo pushed the failing craft to its limits. He had never flown anything like it before. But his human adaptability helped him understand the alien controls. Where a Vorthak pilot would have relied on instinct, Young-Soo used logic and experimentation. The rendezvous point was a rocky plateau 20 miles from the facility. If they could reach it, they might be able to signal for rescue from the human fleet. But the engine died 5 miles short of their destination. Young-Soo fought to control their descent, using every technique he had learned in pilot training. I can't reach the plateau, he announced calmly. But I can get us close. The crash landing destroyed the stolen craft, but Young-Soo's skill kept everyone alive. As the passengers crawled from the wreckage, they could see hive flyers circling overhead like predatory birds. The communication equipment survived, Hyun-woo reported. I can send a message to the fleet, but we need to boost the signal somehow. Young-Soo looked at the wreckage of their transport, then at the approaching enemy forces. His face was calm as he made his decision. I can create a signal booster, he said quietly, but someone needs to stay behind to operate it. Everyone understood what he was really saying. The signal booster would also be a beacon, drawing every enemy in the area directly to this position. I'll do it, Young-Soo continued before anyone could object. Get the intelligence to the fleet. They need to know what's coming. Veltar started to protest, but the young human pilot was already connecting power cells to the communication array. His hands moved with steady precision even as hive forces closed in around them. The message went out in a powerful burst that cut through enemy jamming. 72 hours until the Great Consumption began. 47 processing facilities. Detailed invasion plans, message transmitted, Young-Soo reported. Now go. As the others retreated toward higher ground, Young-Soo remained with the signal booster. He held off pursuing enemies for as long as possible, giving his friends time to escape. The last thing they heard from him was his calm voice saying, "Tell them we figured out how to fly their ships. That might be useful later." Veltar watched the human die and felt something change inside him. Young-Soo hadn't been the strongest or most skilled warrior, but he had given his life so that others could live. Maybe there was more to strength than claws and scales after all. The rescue ship found them 18 hours later. Admiral Seung-jin Oh himself led the recovery mission, bringing 3 destroyers deep into hive territory to retrieve the survivors. When Taeho transmitted the intelligence data, the admiral's face went pale. 47 processing facilities, Seung-jin repeated as he studied the information, and coordinated strikes on 12 sector capitals. This changes everything. The journey back to the main fleet took 2 days. During that time, In Ho-yoon, the fleet's strategic analyst, worked with Soo-jin to decode the captured hive data. What they discovered painted a terrifying picture of enemy capabilities. They're not just random swarms, In-ho explained to the assembled officers. The hive has been planning this campaign for years. Every attack, every probe was gathering intelligence for the Great Consumption. Rathgok, the supreme Vorthak commander, stood 12 feet tall in his ceremonial armor. His ancient scales bore the scars of 100 battles, and his voice carried the authority of absolute command. Then we meet them in battle, he declared. Divide our forces 12 ways and crush each attack as it comes. It was exactly what everyone expected him to say. Vorthak military doctrine was simple and direct. See enemy, fight enemy, win or die trying. It had served them well for centuries of warfare. But Admiral Sung Jin shook his head. We don't have enough ships to fight 12 battles simultaneously. They've planned this precisely to divide our strength. Then what do you suggest, Soft Commander? Rathgok's tone made it clear he considered humans poor strategists. We don't fight their battles, Taeho said from his position near the back of the briefing room. We fight our own. The room fell silent. A mere captain interrupting the Supreme Commander was unthinkable by Vorthak standards. But Admiral Sung Jin nodded for him to continue. The intelligence shows they're coordinating everything from a central hub, Taeho explained. If we strike there during their attack window, we can disrupt all 12 invasions simultaneously. Rathgok's laugh was like grinding stone. Impossible. No force can coordinate such precision across multiple star systems. Warriors fight battles, not mathematical equations. Humans can, Sujin said quietly. The simple statement hung in the air like a challenge. Inho pulled up tactical displays showing the proposed operation. It would require split-second timing across vast distances, with dozens of independent units working toward a single goal. Each strike team would need to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining coordination with the overall plan, Inho explained. It's beyond the capabilities of traditional command structures. Because it cannot be done, Rathgok stated firmly. Warriors need clear orders and visible enemies. You cannot ask soldiers to dance to some invisible pattern like machines. The debate continued for hours. The Vorthak War Council insisted on the direct approach, while human strategists argued for the coordinated strike. Neither side would yield. Then the Hive made the decision for them. Enemy forces launched a surprise attack on the combined fleet itself. Hundreds of Hive ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their organic hulls gleaming like black metal in the starlight. All ships. Battle stations, Admiral Sungjin commanded. The fleet responded instantly. Human vessels moved with precise coordination, while Vorthak ships charged forward to meet the enemy head-on. Two very different approaches to warfare playing out in real time. Boram Han sat at her gunner station aboard the destroyer Stalwart. Around her, human crew members worked with quiet efficiency. No one shouted orders or roared battle cries. They simply did their jobs with mechanical precision. Target the lead cruiser, her weapons officer said calmly. Range 4,000 kilometers and closing. Boram calculated trajectory, enemy movement and stellar drift in her head. The shot was nearly impossible. The target was weaving between friendly ships while accelerating toward the fleet's center. A Vorthak gunner would have relied on instinct and aggressive firing. But Boram used patience and mathematics. She waited until the perfect moment, then fired a single shot that traveled exactly where the enemy ship would be 3 seconds later. The Hive cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. Impossible shot, whispered Thekvar, Rathgok's personal guard who was observing human tactics. How did she know where to aim? She calculated it, replied Yoon Shin from her system station. Humans are good at predicting patterns. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out on every human ship. Crew members who had never worked together before coordinated like parts of a single organism. They shared information instantly, adapted to changing conditions, and supported each other without needing orders. The Vorthak ships fought with their usual courage and ferocity. Individual warriors performed incredible acts of valor, boarding enemy vessels and fighting with claws and teeth when their weapons failed. But something was different about the human ships. They moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds, each unit acting independently yet somehow part of a greater whole. Look at their formation patterns, Rathgok muttered to Thekvar as they watched from the command ship's bridge. They changed configuration without receiving orders. It was true. Human ships adjusted their positions based on local conditions, but somehow their individual decisions served the fleet's overall strategy. No central commander could coordinate such complexity, yet it worked perfectly. Junho Park commanded a wing of human fighters, leading them against a swarm of Hive interceptors. His pilots had trained together for months, but they had never attempted anything this complex. Enemy formation breaking left, he announced over the radio. Alpha flight, take high cover. Beta flight, sweep low. Gamma flight, follow my lead through the center. The human pilots responded without question, trusting their leader's tactical judgment. But more importantly, each pilot made dozens of small decisions that supported the overall plan without needing specific orders. When Alpha Flight encountered unexpected resistance, they adapted their approach while maintaining their covering position. When Beta Flight found a gap in enemy defenses, they exploited it while keeping formation integrity. A Vorthak fighter pilot would have charged straight at the nearest enemy, relying on superior reflexes and aggressive tactics. Human pilots used coordination and mutual support to multiply their effectiveness. The battle raged for 6 hours. Both sides took heavy casualties, but gradually the human approach began to show its advantages. While individual Vorthak warriors might be stronger, human units working together could accomplish impossible things. The turning point came when Boram made another impossible shot. A massive Hive battleship was bearing down on Rathgok's command vessel. The Supreme Commander's ship was damaged and couldn't maneuver effectively. Every weapon in the area focused fire on the battleship, but its armor was too thick. Boram studied the enemy ship through her targeting system. Its armor was indeed impenetrable, but there was a tiny gap where 2 plates met near the engine assembly. The gap was no wider than her fist, and it was only visible for a few seconds as the ship rolled through its attack pattern. I need a firing solution for grid reference. 77 Mark 12, she told her systems officer. That's not a viable target, Yun-Young replied, checking her screens. The opening is too small. Just give me the numbers. Boram waited, her finger poised over the firing control. She had to account for the battleship's movement, her own ship's acceleration, stellar drift, and the slight delay in her weapon's firing mechanism. The gap appeared for exactly 2.3 seconds. Boram fired during the first half-second, sending her shot on a trajectory that would intersect the target at precisely the right moment. The plasma bolt slipped through the gap and detonated inside the battleship's engine core. The massive enemy vessel broke apart in a chain of explosions, its wreckage tumbling away from Rathgok's ship. Thekvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The soft creature saved the Supreme Commander's life. Rathgok studied the battle data, seeing the human gunner's impossible shot replayed in slow motion. The precision required was beyond anything he had ever witnessed. How? He asked simply. Admiral Seung Jin appeared on the communication screen. Because that's what humans do, Commander. We solve problems that have no solution. As the last Hive ships retreated or were destroyed, the fleet took stock of their situation. The enemy attack had been repelled, but at significant cost. More importantly, it proved that the Hive could strike anywhere at any time. They were testing us, Inho reported during the post-battle briefing, gathering data on our response patterns for the main assault. Then we have less than 60 hours before the great consumption begins. Admiral Seung Jin said. Rathgok stood quietly for a long moment, processing what he had witnessed during the battle. His warriors had fought bravely, but the humans had done something else entirely. Your coordination, he said finally to Seung Jin. Your warriors fight like individual creatures yet move like a single organism. How is this possible? Because we think as well as fight, the Admiral replied. Each human can act independently while serving a greater purpose. Show me, Rathgok commanded. If you can truly coordinate the impossible strike you described, I will commit every Vorthak warrior to the mission. Admiral Seung Jin nodded. Then let's show you what humans can do when we work together. The planning took 36 hours. In the fleet's main briefing room, human officers worked with Vorthak war leaders to design the most complex military operation in galactic history. 12 strike teams, each targeting a different processing facility, all coordinated to hit simultaneously within a 30-second window. Each team will face different conditions. Admiral Seung Jin explained to the assembled commanders. You cannot wait for orders from Fleet Command. Every unit must think and adapt independently. Rathgok studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. The operation required thousands of individual decisions, all perfectly timed to serve a single strategic goal. This is madness, he muttered. No army can coordinate such complexity. Human armies can, replied Junho Park, who had been promoted to lead Strike Team 7. We've been training for this our whole lives without knowing it. Boram. Han now served as tactical coordinator for Team Bai 3. Her impossible shooting during the fleet battle had earned her rapid promotion and the respect of Vorthak warriors who had previously ignored her. Existence. How do you soft creatures learn to fight this way? Asked Thekvar, who had volunteered to fight alongside the humans despite his duties as Rathgok's guard. We don't learn it, Boram replied. It's just how we think. Every human can be an individual and part of a team at the same time. The strike teams launched 18 hours before the Great Consumption was scheduled to begin. 12 groups of mixed human and Vorthak forces, each aboard fast ships designed for deep penetration into enemy territory. Yun-Young Shin had equipped every team with captured hive technology, modified by human engineers to work with their existing systems. It was another example of human adaptability, taking enemy tools and making them better. Remember, Admiral Sung-Jin transmitted to all teams as they entered hyperspace. You have a 30-second window when all targets must be neutralized simultaneously. Miss that window, and the other facilities will activate emergency protocols. Strike Team 1, led by Tae-ho, approached the primary facility on Kepler 438b. The planet's surface crawled with millions of hive drones, but their target was a processing center built into the planet's crust. Defenses are heavier than intelligence indicated, reported Min-ho from his sniper position. I count 47 guard towers and automated weapon systems. Patrol patterns have changed since our reconnaissance, added Soo-jin, monitoring enemy communications. They're adapting faster than we expected. A Vorthak commander would have ordered a frontal assault, trusting superior firepower to overcome enemy defenses. But Tae-ho studied the situation and made a different choice. We changed the plan, he announced. Team Alpha will create a distraction at the north entrance. Team Beta will breach the south wall during the confusion. Team Gamma waits for my signal, then hits the central reactor. That's not the plan we rehearsed, protested Karvik. Plans change, Tae-ho replied calmly. This is what humans do. We adapt. Across the galaxy, 11 other teams faced similar challenges. Original strategies proved inadequate as enemy defenses exceeded expectations. But human commanders adjusted their approaches without losing sight of their ultimate objective. On Proxima Centauri C, Junho's team discovered that their target facility was built underwater. Their assault vehicles weren't designed for aquatic operations, but human ingenuity found a solution. We modify the atmospheric processors, suggested one of his engineers. Create an air pocket around the facility, then attack through the artificial environment. It was completely crazy. It had never been attempted before. But humans specialized in making impossible things work. Do it, Junho ordered. Team 5 faced a different problem. Their target was protected by an energy barrier that no weapon could penetrate. The facility seemed completely invulnerable, but Yun-Young remembered something from their intelligence gathering. Soo-jin mentioned seeing patterns in their energy systems, mathematical sequences that repeat every few minutes. She studied the barrier's fluctuations, applying human pattern recognition to what seemed like random energy spikes. Gradually, she began to see the underlying structure. There, she announced. Every 4 minutes and 17 seconds, the barrier drops to 30% strength for exactly 0.8 seconds. It wasn't much of an opening, but humans were experts at exploiting tiny advantages. Team after team encountered impossible obstacles and found human ways to overcome them. When brute force failed, they used intelligence. When strength wasn't enough, they used coordination. The 30-second window approached. All teams prepare for synchronized assault, Admiral Sung-jin transmitted from the fleet command ship. Execute on my mark in 10 seconds. Across 12 different star systems, human commanders made final adjustments to their plans. They had trained for this moment, but no amount of training could prepare them for the complexity they now faced. 5 seconds, the Admiral announced. Tae-ho's team breached the reactor chamber, just as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. His human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency while Vorthak warriors provided overwhelming firepower. 3 seconds. On Kepler 442b, Boram's team had fought through 3 levels of underground defenses. They reached their target with only seconds to spare. 1 second. Execute! 12 processing facilities died in the same instant. The synchronized destruction sent shockwaves through the hive's entire network. Without their coordination centers, the Great Consumption collapsed into chaos. Attack fleets found themselves cut off from central command. Individual units unable to coordinate with their neighbors. But the mission wasn't over yet. As the teams prepared to evacuate, they discovered that the hive had one final surprise. Hidden deep within each facility was a self-destruct mechanism designed to deny the enemy any intelligence value. The whole planet's going to explode, Sujin reported as she monitored the facility's systems. We have maybe 5 minutes before the chain reaction reaches critical mass. This was the kind of situation that Vorthak warriors understood. Clear danger, simple solution. Run as fast as possible and hope you were fast enough. But the humans saw a different possibility. What if we don't run? Taeho asked quietly. What if we stay and stop the explosions? Impossible, Karvek replied. These are nuclear-level detonations. Nothing can survive them. Maybe we can't survive them, Yoon-young said as she studied her readings, but we might be able to prevent them. She had noticed something in the facility's design that only human analytical thinking could have spotted. The self-destruct systems were interconnected, each one depending on signals from the others to maintain the chain reaction. If we can disrupt the synchronization, the whole network might collapse harmlessly, she explained. It meant staying behind while the explosions began. It meant working with failing equipment while radiation levels climbed toward lethal thresholds. It meant trusting human ingenuity over Vorthak's survival instincts. I'll do it, Yoon-young volunteered. We'll all do it, Taeho corrected. Together. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human teams chose to risk their lives for a chance to save entire worlds. It wasn't courage in the Vorthak sense. It was something uniquely human. The ability to see solutions where others saw only death. Working together with failing equipment and rising radiation, the human specialists began disrupting the self-destruct network. Their Vorthak allies provided protection and physical labor, but the delicate technical work required human precision. Synchronization is breaking down, Yoon-young reported as her instruments showed cascading system failures. The chain reaction is losing coherence. One by one, the self-destruct mechanisms shut down safely. 12 worlds that should have died in nuclear fire continued to exist because humans refused to accept that some problems had no solutions. As the evacuation ships finally lifted off, Tekevar sat beside the human specialists who had just saved his homeworld. He had watched them work for hours, never giving up even when death seemed certain. You soft creatures are not warriors, he said quietly. The humans looked at him with confusion, wondering if they had just been insulted. You are something more dangerous than warriors, Tekevar continued. You are hope with weapons. Admiral Sung-jin's voice crackled over the communication system as all 12 teams reported successful mission completion. All facilities neutralized. Great consumption terminated. Congratulations, people. You just saved the galaxy. In the months that followed, the combined human Vorthak fleets drove the hive forces back to their home systems. The enemy's coordination advantage was gone, leaving them vulnerable to traditional military tactics. Standing before a memorial to the fallen, Kraktha and Taeho reflected on everything that had changed since Forward Base 7. I spent my life believing that strength meant claws and scales, the Vorthak war leader said. I thought you humans were weak because your bodies are soft. And now? Taeho asked. Now I understand that your strength comes from something else entirely, Kraktha replied. Your bodies may be soft, but your minds work together in ways we never imagined possible. He turned to face his human friend directly. I fought beside beasts my whole life, thinking I knew what made a warrior. Then I saw what humans could do. You are not beasts at all. You are something far more dangerous.